Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, so here we are for another fantastic week of questions. We've got loads to go through today, and it's a bit of a special one as well. To be honest, the first thing I'm going to talk about, it's not really a question. It's something I want to rant about. This is Kendo Rant after all, which I'll get to in a minute. But this is a long one. I'm going to warn you right now. This is a long one, so you might want to get yourself a cup of tea or coffee. I've got mine here, so I think I'm going to need it to get through this. But we've got a lot to get through. All right, I didn't do one of these last week. We did the Halloween one last Monday, so I didn't do one on Friday. So it's been a little while. You guys must have missed me because we've got plenty to talk about. But before we jump into them, I think you know what I'm going to say. Like, share, subscribe, and shop at KendoStar. KendoStar is the best kendo equipment website in the known galaxy. I own the place, so of course I would say that. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of everybody else, pretty much literally. I'm sure everyone in your dojo is using KendoStar already. They should be. Look at our Trustpilot rating. We're pretty much. I'm pretty sure we're pretty much. You know, we're pretty much at the top of the rankings now in pretty much every way. You get great gear, great service. You get this brilliant channel for free. And I get to keep doing this, which is what I love. So everyone's a winner. Shop at KendoStar.com. Right. Okay. With that being said, okay. The first one, it's not a question. It is a comment on a video that I uploaded last week I did a seminar here in the UK a couple of weeks ago called How to Win Shiai. I was plugging it on here. I have been uploading sporadically clips from the seminar when I was teaching segments, different techniques or whatever. We filmed those. I wore a microphone. We had like a PA while I was doing the teaching anyway, so everyone could hear. But what we did is we saved the recordings of the microphone so you can actually hear what I'm saying as well in the videos. And I've been periodically uploading clips from the seminar, so those of you that weren't able to join could hopefully benefit from what I was teaching there as well. Yeah, if you haven't seen some of those, I've already uploaded one I've put a couple of videos up about Gakudo. I put a video up about Osae Kote, and I think it was day before, I put up a video about Men Misete Kote, and that's what this is in response to. So this comment was in response to it. Now, before we get to the comment itself, let's watch the video. All right, let's watch the video, not the whole thing, but the point in which this comment is referring to. Okay, so that is this. Especially some of you that are still quite actively competing, it's okay to try to cover yourself after hitting, all right? By that I mean a little bit of a dodge. It's okay to do that. It's important, yeah? Some of those French guys are fast, yeah, with the kaisuwaza. Yeah, so just in case. But what is important is that you don't do it as you strike. It's not this way. All right? When I first moved to Japan, this was the way I used to strike kote a lot. This way. Never got the ippon, usually hit the guy on the elbow. So I wasn't even looking. I was like this. All right? So you hit, then you can dodge a bit, okay? As you move. Okay? This is okay, right? Don't get carried away though. No one wants to see this,
all right? No one wants to see that, okay?
Okay, so that specific section is of me talking about that waza, and obviously I'm talking about how it is okay to sort of cover yourself by dodging slightly after you've made the strike. All right. Now, I want to read out the comment that was put on this in relation to that point, because I've got a real rant to go on about it. All right. And now, before I do, to the person that commented on this, thank you very much for commenting. Genuinely, it's a very good comment, and it's highlighted something that's a serious issue with Kendo, particularly in the West. All right, and it is this sort of misunderstanding of zanshin and blocking and dodging as a concept in Kendo, which is being perpetuated, and it ties into a few things really. This is probably going to be quite a big section of today's video, because I feel really strongly, really passionately about it, because it is so sort of misunderstood, I think, if I'm honest. But first thing I want to get out is just say that, look, to the person that commented, this isn't me sort of singling you out. I mean, it is, I guess, but I'm not. You know, I value your question. I think it's a good question, because I think the way you're presenting this is the way that a lot of people are thinking about things, and I just think it's not quite on track. All right. So I don't want this to come across as me sort of picking on you or singling you out or anything like that. I think that your views on this is shared by a lot of people, and it really needs highlighting. All right. Now, I've talked about zanshin as well before, and there's another question about zanshin later, which this will tie into. But let's read the question. All right. It says, very interesting. However, one thing that leaves me dubious is the dodge after the strike. You already hit kote, so after that, there should be a strong zanshin. Dodging for the fear of a counterattack is not, in my opinion, zanshin. We all agree that blocking and dodging is necessary in Shiai, even if it's not great and should be avoided in Kendo, especially in Jigeko, where it makes no sense at all. However, blocking or dodging after a successful strike only shows the shimpan that you fear the possible reaction from your opponent, and this is obviously not zanshin. Closing the distance to defend or passing through at a certain angle to make a counter-attack difficult is fine. Stemi does not mean being reckless and stupid after all, but there's a huge difference between a wise, solid defense and protection and the fear of being hit and losing the ippon. One is Kendo, the other is not. My 2 cents. Okay? I'm going to read you what I wrote in reply to that, and then there's a follow-up comment. I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to start my rant. Okay? So, I wrote in reply to that great comment, you highlight a fundamental problem that Kendo has in the Western world, as I've already said. I'll answer this properly in Kendo Rant tomorrow, which is where we're at now. And as I have a lot to say about how blocking, dodging and zanshin is completely misunderstood, especially outside of Japan. Keeping awareness of the opponent and avoiding a potential counterattack or atoichi is an essential part of what zanshin is. Blocking and dodging are a normal part of Kendo and can be seen even at the highest levels, even in successful 8th Dan exams. They are not wrong or bad zanshin, or even worse, not Kendo, they're normal. Any shimpan that disregards a good kote point because the player dodged to avoid a counterattack after the strike has a fundamental misunderstanding of the concept of zanshin. Unfortunately, especially in the West, such shimpan are quite common. So you can see already, I think you can probably guess how strongly I feel about this. So here's the reply to this, and then we'll get into the sort of meat of what I want to talk about. First of all, thank you for the answer. It's a good point, and I, in first person, have reflected many times about the validity of blocking an opponent in Kendo. I was always taught not to block or dodge the incoming strike, especially outside of Shiai such as Jigeko. Even by Japanese Hachidan sensei visiting Italy, thinking about Tani, Ishii, Hirakawa, Asami. Obviously, I know who a couple of those are. For what I've caught of the lessons, there are 2 main points of view. Blocking and dodging is fundamentally wrong because it destroys the concept of stemi. Once you start an action, you should commit to it completely without fear of being struck. Again, this doesn't mean launching reckless attacks or not having a strong defensive posture to negate the opponent, their intended targets. Stemi is self-sacrifice, not suicide. The second reason is because Kendo is supposed to be a way to refine and perfect ourselves. If I block my opponent without executing Ojuwaza, I'm just expressing fear. I'm negating him the possibility to study the technique, especially in Jigeko. It's a hard disagree here. And I'm not learning anything myself. I should give myself generously to my opponent, committing myself fully, but without expressing shikai. This is my opinion, and the truest form of Kendo. On the other side, if we think of a real sword fight, it's clear that blocking or dodging are fundamental and not being killed by a lucky strike from opponent. And this kind of blocking after a strike could be considered a form of Zanshin, because I'm presenting a reaction to a possible counter move and I'm aware of the movement of my opponent. However, the true question is, do we consider Kendo as a modern martial art in which the goal is self-improvement following the way of the sword, and as such, acts like blocking, dodging have no sense other than expressing fear? Or do we consider Kendo a realistic sword duel in which I'm fighting for my life and such blocking is perfectly okay and encouraged and I don't want to die? This, in my opinion, is the true question. Final note, even taking all your points, I think that many people in Shiai block only because they're afraid to lose at Ippon. They're scared. There's no real sense in these blocks other than I want to win the match, so I must not be hit. Yeah. Again, thanks a lot for your answer. And if you have any reference or videos of Hachidan examination with blocking or dodging, I'd like to see them. So I replied to this already. I've not put my thing, but I have sent you. I searched the first Hachidan Shinsa I could find, and the person and it shows who passed, and straight away it's in pretty much every one. You know, there's a bit of a dodge or a block here. Obviously not the same as you'd see in a Shiai. Right. Here's what I take issue with, right, before I get too deep into this, right? We all agree that blocking and dodging is necessary in Shia, even if it's not great and should be avoided in Kendo. No, we don't all agree on that. We don't all agree that it should be avoided in Kendo, for a start. We do not all agree with that, and yeah, that's the first thing. I think. Again, I'm not attacking you here, the person that wrote this comment. There's a lot of you that think this way, right? But as I said, Zanshin is being aware of the opponent and being able to keep your awareness of them and avoid or deal with a potential counterattack or atoichi. All right? That's what Zanshin, it's not what it is, but it's an essential part of what it is, right? How is passing through at a certain angle to make counterattack difficult any different to blocking or dodging in its concept of avoiding a counterattack? It's not. It's not different at all. All right. Now, yes, essentially after a strike, you would keep your opponent in your concentration, avoid your counter-attack or counter-strike by using ashi-sabaki, tai-sabaki, shinai-sabaki, all right? Also known as blocking and dodging. You can dodge with your body, you can dodge with your feet, you can block with your shinai, all right? This is basic stuff. This idea that it's wrong to block or wrong to dodge just doesn't make sense, all right? As I said clearly in that video, it's not a good idea to overly rely on blocking, on dodging in an extreme way, all right? It's not a good idea to do that. That isn't to say that if you dodge a little bit after you make a kote strike, that isn't Zanshin. Like that doesn't make sense at all in terms of Kendo. Stemi means to throw everything into the strike. It doesn't mean, okay, so why don't we when we hit kote, why don't we just stay where we are? If we're that confident with how brilliant our kote is, why don't you kote like this and stay straight where we are? Why don't we do that? Don't close the distance. Don't move in any direction. Just hit the kote and stay there staring at them. Why don't we do that? You can do that. But why is that not the kind of epitome of perfect Zanshin? Because you shouldn't be scared of a counterattack, right? You see where this starts to fall apart? It just doesn't add up. And look, I understand what you're saying, right? I realized you were always taught not to block or dodge. That's taught a lot outside of Japan. I never, ever, ever heard that in Japan. Nobody told me that in Japan. You should never block. And I don't believe for a second that any of these Hachidan senseis that you mentioned have said you should never block. You should never dodge. You should never block. I don't believe they said that. I don't believe they said that. Obviously, there are situations in Kendo when it's better not to focus on blocking, but to focus on attacking, right? And you highlight in Jigeko, right? But it's also not really correct to say you should never block in Jigeko either. It's not really correct to say that. It depends on the context of the keiko. If you're practicing with the sensei or the senior and they're doing the hikitate geiko, yes, blocking, avoiding them, avoiding engaging, that misses the point of the keiko. You should be trying to do the shikake waza, try to overcome, try to attack with sutemi, even with disregard for whether you're going to be struck. In gokaku geiko, with the, more sort of competitive keiko with the peers, yeah, obviously it's better if you can do ojuwaza, but you can't. Who can do that? Nobody can do that. Even the 8th dans can't do ojuwaza every single time. They try to, but it's like, so you should either do ojuwaza or get hit. Where's the sense in that? There's no sense in that at all. The other thing is, there's this point you make about, it's supposed to be a way to refine yourself. If I block my opponent without excusing ojuwaza, I'm just expressing fear. No, it's not. You're allowed to not want to get hit. You're allowed to not want to, right? And if you're not able to execute ojuwaza in that moment, blocking is better than receiving the strike. It's better for your opponent to do that. It's not fair to your opponent to let them hit you when you could have blocked it. That's not helping them. That's not helping them at all. That's letting them think that they're doing better than they are. It's giving them a false sense of where they're at. It's not right or noble to receive strikes because you didn't want to block. What? It's and it's not a case of, is Kendo about a method of perfecting yourself, or is it a real sword fight? Kendo's not a real sword fight, but Shiai is the Shinken Shoba. It's the closest we've got to the real sword fight, and it doesn't mean though that it's just Kendo is of course a modern martial art that is Budo and a method of self-improvement. That doesn't mean that if you block you're failing that at all. Tell me this. I know the comment was about dodging, but dodging, blocking, it's the same concept, right? Tell me this then. Why in this book here is there a chapter on how to block? Why is there one? If it's wrong, why is there a chapter on how to blocking attacks? Why does that exist? All right? Why in the Bokuto ni yoru Kihon Waza Keiko number 4 there's a block? There's a block, just a block. It's not an ojuwaza, it's not anything. It's just a block. Why does that exist? All right, because blocking isn't wrong. It's not always the strategic best move. If you're practicing with the Hachidan and you're just blocking every time they hit you, yeah, that's not the best use of your time or theirs. Sure. This seminar was called How to Win Shiai. Right? How to win Shiai. The point of the Shiai is to win and to not lose. That is the entire point of it. You have to do that. And if you're not trying to do that to the best of your ability and doing everything you possibly can not to lose and to make sure that you win, I'm out of focus, aren't I? I need to get this camera so there we go. If you don't do that, you are not doing it properly. All right? Shiai means to test each other. It doesn't mean to compete, it means to test each other. You are not testing your opponent if you are not giving them everything to stop them from winning. You're not doing it. You're giving them the false match. And it's for the sake of your own sort of noble pride or feeling of this sort of noble pride. And again, I'm not attacking you that's made this comment. It's not you, right? This is how you've been taught, because so these sort of things have been taken out of context. And, you know, Japanese teachers come over and they'll say something like this. They're saying, you know, pretty much in line with what I'm saying here, because I know what they're saying. They said it to me too. And, you know, you get this half, kind of only a snippet of what they mean is kind of misunderstanding. It's compounded by wishful thinking of a lot of teachers in the West who want to say you're not allowed to block, blocking is bad, which is just, there's no evidence to back that up. It's not there, right? Why do they dodge in the Hachidan Shiai then? Why do they dodge in the Hachidan grading and still pass or block? Why do they do that? It doesn't make sense. What's happening here is we're taking a small concept, which is it's not always a great strategy to block, and expanding that to something that's different, and then setting it in stone like it's some kind of commandment. And it happens with a lot of things, you know, and it started happening with the new rules, the sort of, I don't think they're so temporary rules about, you know, I saw this on Reddit, and I went on a little crusade over there about it, because, you know, and it's happening a lot because there's this sort of wishful thinking that in the new rules say, and it's not even new, this part really anyway, but that if you use extreme blocks like this, close in on your opponent and avoid engaging in the match, it can be handsoku. And that detailed sentence has been sort of modified to blocking equals handsoku for a lot of people. And it's not that. The point is, I'm going on a tangent here, but the point is, it is not the blocking that's a problem, it's the not engaging in the shiai that is a problem. So, yeah. Of course, at a seminar, when I'm, you know, look, of course, when you're practicing Kihon Kote, very basic Kihon, you should practice the basic sort of thing. You don't have to worry about blocking and dodging. At a seminar where I'm teaching you how to win the shiai, the point is you have to block or you have to dodge. You have to not be hit as well as hit. That's what a shiai is, right? So for me to go there and say, don't dodge, how to win shiai, don't dodge, how irresponsible would that be for a start? Right? Instead, what I'm saying in the clip that we're talking about, that we watched a bit earlier, is it's okay to dodge, but this is how you have to do it, right? Don't do it whilst you're making the strike. Don't overdo it. Hit, and then you can do it a bit, right? And as for saying, you know, well, if your kote strike was good, you shouldn't need to. It shows fear. That's nonsense. It's just not how the real world works. You do not have time to check if your kote strike was good enough for ippon and check if the referees agree with you. All right, you are talking about split milliseconds, right? Your body has to do this automatically. It has to do it automatically. You do not have time to think, oh, well, that one was good enough, so I don't need to dodge or I don't need to move. Yeah, you don't need to do. You don't have time for that, and you do not have. I mean, it's just missing the point to say, well, you should make kote strikes and not dodge, because if it's a good kote strike, then you won't need to dodge because it'll already be ippon. What? Who gambles like that? The shiai's not a gamble. It's like, you know. I think that's the end of my rant there on that. I hope it's got my point across, but like, we've got to stop this, like taking something and turning it into like some kind of ideological commandment. You show me one piece of literature, Kendo literature, in English or Japanese, that says you should never block. Just show it to me. It's not there. It's not there. Like, I'm sort of, again, look, thank you so much for making this comment, because I'm not saying this towards you directly. I'm saying this towards in a way, in the sort of community of teachers that have perpetuated this nonsense. All right. It's like the ICUs that have to do this big massive swing and then run off to the distance in the sunset. And we'll get onto that later, because I know there's a question about it already. So, right, okay, I'll spend the first half of the video whinging about that. So, if you don't agree with me, write it in the comments. I can't wait to read it and ignore it. Right. I've said my piece on it. Right. Hi, Andy. Personal question, but do you think it's better to focus on just cutting men in Jigeiko? I'm currently ungraded, but I don't feel like I'm far away from IKKU, and I'm not sure what to put my effort into when practicing at home. I want to get better at striking kote, but I feel like my men's strikes are beginning to improve somewhat, so any advice would be appreciated. And as always, shop at KendoStar. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. Okay. If you're against a teacher or a senior, yeah, probably just hit men. If at the level that you're at, and with your peers or people who aren't super high level or something like that, yeah, give kote a try. Don't start messing around with waza that are above your sort of pay grade at the moment. You'll get to them in time, don't worry. But what you really need to be focusing on is, for now, until you get through Shodan, you really need to focus on making strikes with Kikentai no Ichi, and trying to figure out when to make those strikes. So watch, when you're practicing with your teachers, watch for the chances they should be giving you and try to take them immediately. And for the most part, they should be men strikes. It might not be, it might be kote strikes, in which case strike kote, all right? But don't get carried away and try and practice all sorts of nonsense for now. Next. Hi Andy, I'm really enjoying the clips of how to win Shiai seminar. Good. Are there any more resources on the subject of getting better at Shiai out there? I just passed Shodan and have a pretty good handle on Debana Men. Which techniques should we focus on to get better at Shiai? No, the thing is, this is why I did the seminar and this is why I filmed it, is because there aren't really any sources out there. Certainly not in English. There's quite a few in Japanese if you can speak Japanese, but they're quite hard to follow unless your Japanese is reasonably fluent. Yeah, I mean, if you just pass Shodan, yeah, you need to, especially if you want to start winning Shiai, you need to make the things you need to make sure you want to do if you want to get better at Shiai. And this goes for everyone at every level, because I'm sorry, there's guys out there who are like 5th Dan that I know who don't get this either. Is awareness. That's the biggest thing. I talked about this in the seminar and I didn't video it, so I'll give you an insight into that now. I'm in rant mode today, all right? So if I come off it's like snarky or something, don't get offended. Yeah, I got all wound up about that blocking thing because it is something that winds me up. Not you, the guy that wrote it, all right? It's not towards you. It's just towards the concept that you've unfortunately been misled about. Anyway, the awareness, all right? How often is it, do I see that people are throwing waza out there, especially in Shiai, and then they're like trying to run off into this and like kote, like this, and they've nowhere near touched the kote, nowhere near made the men's strike. It's nowhere near possible that it could be considered a yuko datotsu, but still they're trying to claim it somehow. And it's like, you don't quite realize that you just didn't hit. You're not quite aware of that. So that's the biggest thing. And at Shodan, that's when you need to start thinking about it. You know, you need to be aware of whether these strikes that you're making are valid or not. And if they're not, don't waste your Shiai time dancing around the Shiaijo trying to convince the Shimpan as if you know better than they do, which is what a lot of people seem to do. In terms of techniques, at your level, go and watch the video that I just put up on Osae kote and Men Misete kote. These are waza that are really useful around your level, up to about 3rd Dan. Especially the Men Misete kote. After 3rd Dan, it gets a bit hard. The Men Misete kote gets a little bit harder to pull off. But there'll be more videos coming soon about what to do at that point. So yeah, unfortunately, there's not much else. other than what I'm putting out there right now. Okay. Hi, Andy. I was chatting with someone in my Kendo club the other day, and he talked about developing injuries in his knees when he used to go for runs, and he warned me to take care of my body while I'm young to be careful not to get injured. Sip of coffee. And that got me thinking, what kind of injuries tend to be common among Kendoka, and what type of injuries, whether developed through Kendo or by other means, tend to interfere with your ability to compete? And secondly, are you personally aware of any general tips that may be common for preventing certain types of injuries that would affect your ability to do Kendo when you become older? Second question, on the topic of injuries, I keep injuring the bottom of my left foot during practice. I watched one of your previous videos where you discussed the importance to make sure you're not twisting your left foot. I've been careful about keeping my left foot straight, but I've received some tears on the skin regardless, and my calluses keep ripping off after Kendo. Do you have any more advice regarding this? Right. Injuries in Kendo, depends, right? There's injuries there's two types of injuries in Kendo, I think. I'm obviously not a doctor or any sort of medical person. I think you could probably guess that quite easily. But in my book, or in my experience, there's like two types of injuries. Those are the ones that are sort of preventable, and then there's the ones that are sort of inevitable. So the preventable ones are things like muscle tears, Achilles tendon injuries, things like this, usually caused through overtraining or through lack of warming up, looking after yourself properly. At the end of the day, preventing injury in Kendo is very similar to preventing it in most other sports. To make sure you're warmed up and you're stretching properly, make sure your body is in good condition, try and eat healthily as much as you can, try not to, do things that are bad for you. Obviously, if you're like overweight and stuff like that, it's going to put a lot more pressure on your body, especially your joints when you're doing an activity like Kendo than it would if you weren't. So there's that to bear in mind as well. Yeah. In terms of injuries that I think are inevitable, it's not that they're inevitable, but there are kind of if you do Kendo if you do Kendo an awful lot, then it takes a toll on your body. I think common injuries or issues that Kendoka have, that specifically Kendoka that compete at very high levels or participate in a lot of training, are issues with their wrists. I've had pretty much all of these issues. I'm thinking about myself. I've had issues with my wrists. I've had issues with my elbows. I've had issues with my shoulders. And I think tennis elbow is a pretty common one. And I think everybody's good. Not everybody, but I think if you do Kendo really seriously and do it quite a lot, you're going to get tennis elbow at some point, most likely. Because tennis elbow, if I remember right from when I had it, it's not the problem isn't necessarily in your elbow. It's like in the tendons in your forearm or something like that. And that's obviously something that you use a lot in Kendo. And obviously as you start to get older, your body doesn't quite handle the strain of it as well as it used to. So probably when I started getting the most issues, like those sort of issues, in my early 30s, I got the wrist issues, but I was training an awful lot. In those days. And it was just overuse. And I didn't stop to it wasn't one of those things where, oh, my wrist's hurting a bit today, I won't go to Kendo. It was, I'd just tape it up and get on with it. Because I didn't feel it whilst I was training, it was just in between. So I used to have to tape my wrists up a lot. I've also had issues with my ankles a little bit, but not so much, to be honest. I've had issues that were preventable. Like I say, I've torn both of my calf muscles, not at the same time, but once through overtraining and once through being a bit silly and sort of jumping into a very intense Keiko without really warming up properly, and after being out of the competitive scene for quite a while, I just threw myself in there. Yeah, I was asking for that. So yeah, that's it really. And obviously you get bruises and stuff. Can you recommend exercises to practice, train at home without a partner to help improve when you can get to the dojo? You could do like some Suburi. If you watch the Suburi along videos that I did during the last couple of years, they're okay for that sort of thing, but don't overdo it. I actually think the best thing you can do in your own time outside of the dojo is Mitori Yeiko. Get on YouTube, watch what Kendo looks like, and try to remember, try to follow along with that. Okay, next one. Okay, I remember seeing this one when I copied it out. So this is the other one that's going to get me ranting. Please excuse the preamble, but I got a kind of nuanced question, and I don't want this to come off as challenging what you said or getting you to backpedal or anything like that. I'm kidding. Rather, I appreciate that you know much more Kendo than I understand, and there are gaps in my knowledge that you can help me bridge. Similar to when you seem to hear conflicting feedback from Sensei, but they're actually trying to have you understand in their own way. So here goes. In the final between Ando and Murakami, this is of the All Japan Championships, we see Murakami run past Ando and break eye contact for a significant amount of time, maybe 1 to 1.5 seconds. Is that a significant amount of time? He did run quite a way through and left Ando pretty far behind. This seems to challenge what you said about his Zanshin video, and recently you've spoken about what Zanshin means within Shinsa. So I'd love to get your interpretation of how Murakami's run through fits within the Zanshin. Maybe it doesn't fit him well at all. Now he's kept his connection to his, how he's kept his connection to his opponent, and how much of the rest of the criteria for Yuko to Totsu need to be fulfilled for this to count as Ippon, assuming he broke Zanshin a bit. Viewable on your video here. All right, we'll have a look at the video in a minute, but this is going off, right? All the ranting I've done about not hitting men and going off in the distance, going, and then turning around, you're like, you know, like 400 feet apart from each other, and then you have to kind of, and then they always do the Suriashi back, so it takes about 5 minutes for them to get back to each other. Man, that's me ranting on that, right? Is what you're talking about, right? Before we look at the video, do we really think that what Murakami did in the final of the All Japan Championships is sort of equates to the same thing as that? It doesn't, does it? It doesn't. Let's have a look at the video, all right? Let's have a look at the video. Let me bring it up. Okay. So I'll try and keep my voice out of it. Well, let's just watch it. Let's just watch it, all right? Okay. Yeah, see, he's really struggling to find a way in. It's just not there. And there we go, bam. Look at that. Look at that. So you're talking about he's really struggling to find a way in. This bit here where Ando moves out of the way because he tried to dig out there and failed. And Murakami has obviously he's just bossed this amazing men that is obviously Ippon. This is what I'm talking about with that awareness, right? And he takes a couple of steps past and quickly turns around. That is not the same as IQ candidates or people in Shiai, even low-level Shiai, usually going, man. It's not the same. It's not the same. He broke eye contact for like a second. Would it have been better if he hadn't done that and if he'd turned around on the spot? Maybe. Yeah, probably. But like he was throwing himself forward and suddenly Ando wasn't there after he hit, right? Already you can see the flags are up because it was an amazing men strike. So he takes an extra step and turns around. It's not like he totally just left, just deleted Ando from his mind, you know. This is what I'm saying about this sort of risk of taking something somebody says, whether it's a sensei from Japan or whether it's me, right, and then taking it and then trying to like extrapolate that to mean this is, you should, you know, when I said, yeah, you should, it's best to keep your eyes on your opponent. Don't go off into the distance. Don't lose them from your sort of, your like awareness. Yeah. Don't do that. And try and keep them in your field of view, right? To never take your eyes off the opponent or it's not ippon. It's not the same thing, is it? Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's you sort of turn something into a commandment that isn't. Yeah. You should keep your eyes on and your awareness towards the opponent after striking. Should you run to the other end of the shijo or your back totally to them? No. All right. I don't know how to answer the question better than that, because it's not the sort of thing where I can say to you, oh well, that specific case, that one was okay because he did this and that happened and then this happened. It's not really how it works. If you just watch the whole context of that particular ippon, yeah, of course that was Zanshin. Of course that was perfect men ippon. It was amazing. And yeah, he broke eye contact for like a second. Big deal, you know. It's a bit like the previous one. Like, imagine if he'd hit Kote and then after hitting Kote, even though he hit this amazing Kote, he kind of did this dodge. It's like someone's trying to say, well, he dodged afterwards. You know, and I know I said that. I know it was me that said don't take your eyes off him. And yes, in principle, that is the case. But don't get carried away. All right, don't get carried away with what I'm saying. All right, it's like these aren't commandments. Some things in Kendo are commandments. All right, some things are set in stone that you're really supposed to do in a specific way. All right, but not everything's like that. All right, not everything's like that. Okay. Right. Hi, Andy. Quick question this time. I roughly understand the grades in Q and Dan, but what are the Shi grades for? Thank you for your content and everything you do for the international Kendo community. No, thank you very much. Right. So the Shi grades that you're talking about, they're Renshi, Kyoshi, and Hanshi. They are called Shogo, and they are titles rather than grades, which are awarded to Kendoka who have sort of established a particular sort of aspect of their Kendo career, for want of a better term. They are Renshi and Kyoshi are done by examination, and Hanshi is done by nomination. So you don't take an exam for Hanshi. Usually, once you have Hachidan for about 20 years, you're usually nominated for it. But Renshi and Kyoshi, they have an exam, and for Renshi, you have to have held 6th Dan for more than a year, and for Kyoshi, you have to have held 7th Dan for more than 2 years. And there's, you like write an essay, you submit like a resume of your contribution to Kendo, and if they see fit, they award you with the title, essentially. It's basically to show that your Kendo isn't just based on your Kendo ability directly, that you're actually cultivating Kendo, and that you've got some sort of development on the sort of personal side as well. Okay, Renshi means the one who's practiced. Kyoshi means like the teacher, and Hanshi is kind of like master. Kind of. Okay, right. We're nearly there. Okay, so Andy, I got two things I'd like your advice on, if you don't mind. First one is I'm not understanding tenuchi, as in no matter how lightly I hold my shin out, how relaxed I think my shoulders are, the feedback I get most after keiko is that I use too much of my right hand. I practically don't even hold the shin out in my right hand anymore, except for the last instant when I strike, where I give that kind of squeeze to bring the shinai back up, but I don't know if that's a problem or not. Without seeing my practice or actually practicing with me, what would you recommend to fix this? My second issue is I have no ojiwaza. At least I recognize that. I recognize right away, none that I recognize right away. Like I've never done or practiced kaishidomen, kaishimen, that sort of thing. This next part is length and explanation. In my background, it's probably best to edit out to save time. Now we're already well into past the point of saving time. In fact, in 5 years I've been doing kendo. I've only been in one shiai. I've recently moved prefectures. I'm in Japan. Okay, that explains a lot. So my dojo situation is different now. More people my level, but fewer teachers to get advice from. My old dojo, there was one of the two. I was one of the 2 or 3 lowest ranked students training with a bunch of 5, 6 and 7th dan senseis. After every exam, all the teachers basically gave me up towards the next rank. But one thing they never went over was ojiwaza or winning shiai. After sandan, the main thing they pushed me towards was seme and taking seichusen, which worked for me. But when I got to the new dojo, and actually got to do actual gokaku geiko with people my level, I never attacked off the seichusen anymore. I see that a lot here, especially with the younger crowd. Okay, I never tried to win gokaku geiko or jigeiko. Here's my main question. Will not having any ojiwaza in my repertoire hurt me in my future yondan exam? I just got sandan this past February, so I have a decent amount of time until yondan to correct this, but failing to plan is plan to fail. Thanks in advance. Okay, good. So, first bit about your tenuchi. Look, there's 2 things I'd say about that. One, Japanese sensei often tell you use too much right hand when they don't really know what to tell you. That's one thing. But second, it's obviously hard for me to say without seeing what you're doing, all right? It's very difficult for me to say exactly. But the thing is the thing about the whole right hand thing is it's one of those things that everybody thinks they're not using the right hand when they actually are, because you do it super subconsciously. The only way to deal with it is to practice out of it. You just have to keep swinging the shinai. All right? The best thing you can do is just loads of kirikaishi. That'll help you get rid of it. About your ojiwaza issue. Right, well, here's the reason that you've got this situation that you're in, right? Ojiwaza isn't really required for your gradings, probably I'd say until around 5th or 6th dan. Not really. Obviously, it's great if you can do it in 3rd and 4th dan, but you'll get through, as you've seen, you can get through 3rd dan no problem without using ojiwaza. You get through 4th dan without using ojiwaza. You probably get through 5th dan without using it. You could. Is it a good place to be, though, at 3rd dan going on 4th dan and not being able to do any ojiwaza? It's not, all right? And the problem you've got is sort of joining in these adult practices in Japan, you know, it's unlikely someone's going to teach it to you, all right? The best thing you can do is ask one of your senseis to say, sensei, do you think, you know, could you give me some advice about ojiwaza? Yeah. You know, I'm curious about it. Could you give me some advice on it? I'm sure they'd be happy to tell you. I'm sure, or some of the other people in your club. Because the problem you got in these sort of adult dojos in Japan, in my experience, is there's not a lot of time for that sort of kihon keiko, that sort of basics practice or practicing techniques and waza, because most people do that at school and university for years and years, and then when they get to adults, they just end up doing loads of jigeiko. And in terms of obviously taking the seichusen is the center line. Yeah, that's super important. Of course it is. But yeah, I mean, 90%, probably, it depends where you are in Japan, but 90% of adults doing Kendo don't. That's obviously, I'm plucking that figure out at the top of my head. Don't somebody write like, oh, it's actually 83.9%, whatever, right? But most adults in Japan don't participate in shiai. Most adults don't, all right? So that's probably why they've never talked to you about Shiai or anything like that. I think the best thing you could do, is talk to your senseis and say, I'd say, look, and the best place to do it is if there's like a nomikai or like something like that, like a little party that often have these after, or a second dojo, like after the dojo, something like that. Try and, but if not, just ask them in the dojo. Say, so sensei, you know, I'd like to learn a bit about Ojiwaza. I don't really know much. Could you, you know, help me with it? And then also maybe, and then another thing I'd say is like, also I'm interested to try the Shiai. Is there any Shiai that people like me can join? Because I've never done it. And they might be able to advise you, you know. That's the best bet, to be honest. And then the best thing you could do is, in addition to your dojo practice, try to find like a high school or a university that you can join the practice with. All right? Ask the people in your dojo. I'm sure there's someone that can introduce you to one, right? Because then you'll get to do more kihon, all right? And you'll learn some ojiwaza. And don't be afraid to ask the kids. You know, if you go to high school, you know, I had to do this. Like the first time I went to high school to practice, like for an extended period, I couldn't keep up with them in the very beginning, very, very high level high school. You know, I had to ask these kids who were obviously, you know, quite a lot younger than me, probably 10 years younger than me at the time, and say like, you know, oh, can you give me some advice about that technique? I've never done it before, or something like that. And they're always willing to help. So I'm sure you'll do well. Okay, last one. Hi Andy Sensei, while the Jitsuki section of the Shinsai is clear regarding the performance expectations for each dan grade, how is kata judged? How should a 4th, 5th, 6th dan performance of Ippon differ from a first dance? For me, I don't think there is a clear difference in Ippon, for example, the level of performance between 4th, 5th and 6th dan. I'd expect someone to try and get through 3rd dan with, you know, with the kata without making mistakes. And then, yeah, especially in the first ones. But let's say the difference between 4th and 6th dan for the kata, probably, I don't sit on grading panels at all, to be honest, anymore. But I'm not qualified to sit on ones for 6th dan, but I would think that it's more to do with how they are controlling the bokuto. Is quite obvious, and I think you can see by the way that they perform the kata as to how they understand the pacing and the eye of the kata. You can sort of see that, right, if they understand the eye or not, and you can sort of understand that the depth of that at each stage. In all honesty, outside of Japan, we tend to be a bit too strict on kata anyway. At least in my experience in Europe. I don't know what it's like over in other countries, but in Europe, they tend to be a bit too strict on kata, like compared to Japan. I'm pretty sure you could get through 6th dan kata as long as you don't make any glaring mistakes in the actual forms. You probably get through the kata. In Japan anyway. So there we go. Okay, thank you for joining me today. I know it was a super long one. Thank you for tolerating my my rant earlier, but look, please do take away from this, yeah, it's not, you know, Kendo is not this kind of super, you know, we are so noble, we never block, we never dodge, we're too good for that. Like, don't get into that mindset. That isn't, you know, you're not helping your opponent by not preventing their waza from being successful. All right? If you allow them to strike you when you could have prevented it, you are not helping them. And that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. All right. And also the Zanshin thing, you know, don't get carried away. Okay. All right. Thanks for joining me. Shop at KendoStar. See you next time. Bye-bye.